Fly this plane and I'll marry you, the millionaire taunted the black cleaning lady. Her secret shocked him. I bet $1,000 she doesn't even know where the ignition is, laughed Jonathan Mitchell, pointing to the woman cleaning the private hangar of her aviation company. The CEO of Mitchell Aviation had just lost a silly bet with her partners about who could land the corporate jet most accurately, and her wounded pride was looking for an easy target. 34-year-old Diana Santos pretended not to hear as she wiped the windows of the luxurious office. After 2 years working in that hangar, she was used to the derogatory comments from the wealthy pilots and his spoiled bosses. But something in Jonathan's particularly cruel tone that morning made an old flame ignite in her eyes. "Hey you," Jonathan shouted, tapping on the window to get her attention. "Come here for a minute." Diana put the cloth on the cart and approached, maintaining the respectful posture she had perfected over the past few years. "Yes, Mr. Mitchell?" "My friends and I were discussing natural talent for aviation," he said, gesturing to the other businessmen who watched the scene with mischievous smiles. "Have you ever flown in an airplane?" "Once, sir," Diana replied simply, without mentioning that it had been hundreds of times, in military aircraft that cost more than Jonathan's entire private fleet. "Once," he repeated, provoking laughter from the group. "Perfect. I'll make you an offer you can't refuse. If you can fly my jet to Seattle Airport and back without killing me, she'll marry you. How about it?" The comment sparked an explosion of laughter. It was the perfect joke for these men. The absurd idea of a black cleaning lady flying a $20 million aircraft was the height of ridiculousness. Diana lowered her eyes for a moment, as if considering the impossible proposal. When she looked up again, there was something different in his gaze, a cold serenity that made Jonathan frown without understanding why. "I accept," she said calmly. The silence that followed was deafening. Jonathan blinked several times, clearly not expecting that answer. "What?" "I said I accept his proposal, Mr. Mitchell. When do we leave?" The unshakable confidence in her voice caused a strange discomfort among the group. It was as if Diana knew something he didn't, as if she were keeping a secret too powerful to reveal before the right time. If you're enjoying this story of courage and reversal, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple moment of mockery would become the catalyst for a humiliation Jonathan Mitchell would never forget. Jonathan's laughter echoed through the hangar like the sound of breaking glass. "You accept? Are you serious?" He turned to his friends, gesturing dramatically. "Guys, witness this historic moment, the cleaning lady who's going to teach us about aviation." Diana kept her expression serene as she watched the group of middle-aged white men writhe with laughter. 2 years of cleaning that place had taught her exactly who they were, men who had inherited fortunes from their fathers and believed that made them superior to the rest of humanity. "Jonathan, man, this is going to be a joke at the club for decades," said Richard Blackstone, owner of a chain of luxury car dealerships. "Just imagine, remember the time he almost married the cleaning lady?" What they didn't know was that her had flown aircraft far more complex than Jonathan's private jet. During 12 years of service in the Air Force, she had flown everything from F-16 fighter jets to huge C-130 cargo transporters. But that knowledge remained locked in her mind, protected by years of necessary silence. "Well, since you accept the challenge," said Jonathan, wiping away tears of laughter, "how about we make it more interesting? If you manage to take off without blowing up her $20 million plane, she'll pay for her college. But when she fails miserably, promise she'll never set foot in this hangar again." The casual cruelty of those words hit Diana like a punch in the stomach. She desperately needed that job. Her 10-year-old daughter Lila was being treated for chronic asthma, and her basic health insurance barely covered the monthly appointments. Every penny of his salary went straight to the medications and inhalers that kept his little girl breathing. "I accept the terms," Diana replied, her steady voice masking the turmoil inside. Jonathan pulled out his cell phone and started recording. "Perfect. I'm going to post this on social media. CEO challenges employee, fly or be fired. It'll go viral in a matter of hours." Diana closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the words of his former commander, Colonel Jefferson. "Soldier, in the air you are not a man or a woman, black or white. You are pure competence. And competence does not lie." "When do we leave, Mr. Mitchell?" she asked, opening her eyes with a determination that made Jonathan hesitate for a split second. "Right now," he said, regaining his arrogance. "My friends will watch from the VIP box while you try not to kill us." As they walked toward the jet, Diana noticed something the others didn't. The aircraft's registration number, N478 Alpha Mike. It was exactly the same model she had flown during reconnaissance missions in Afghanistan. She knew every bolt, every system, every detail of that machine. Richard whispered loud enough for her to hear, "I bet 50,000 she can't even start the engines." "You're on," laughed another businessman. "That poor thing probably doesn't even know how to drive a car properly." But as Diana climbed the steps of the aircraft, something in her posture changed subtly. His movements became more precise, more confident. It was as if a second personality was awakening, the elite pilot who had slept for years under the uniform of a cleaning lady. What those privileged men couldn't imagine was that every word of contempt, every cruel laugh, every arrogant gesture was fueling a strength he could never comprehend. It was the silent strength of a man who had faced sandstorms in the desert, landed on bombed-out runways, and saved lives while bullets flew around him. She had kept this secret for so long that she had almost forgotten who she really was. But now, sitting in the cockpit of that jet, her hands touching the familiar controls, Diana Santos was finally about to remind the whole world what a real pilot was capable of. Diana slid her fingers across the familiar controls like a pianist rediscovering her instrument after years of forced silence. The cockpit of the executive jet was almost identical to the military models he had commanded during high-risk missions in the Middle East. Every switch, every indicator, every system spoke a language she mastered better than her own mother tongue. "Look, she's really trying," Jonathan laughed from outside, holding his cell phone to capture every second of what he believed to be a comedy about to turn into tragedy. "I bet she doesn't even know how to turn on the air conditioning." But Diana wasn't trying. She was performing a pre-flight check with a military precision that had saved her life and that of her comrades dozens of times. Her eyes systematically scanned each instrument, checking hydraulic pressure, electrical systems, fuel, engine temperature. It was like riding a bike. The body never forgets. "Mr. Mitchell," a hesitant voice interrupted the laughter. It was Tom Rodriguez, the hangar's chief mechanic, a Navy veteran who had served 3 tours in Iraq. He was watching Diana through the cockpit window, her expression gradually changing from curiosity to recognition and then to something close to shock. "What is it, Tom?" Jonathan asked, irritated by the interruption to his entertainment. "It's just, the way she's doing the pre-flight check. That's not luck or imitation. She knows every system on this plane. Look at how he's adjusting the flight compensators. That's standard military procedure." Jonathan rolled his eyes. "Tom, you're seeing things. She's a cleaning lady, for God's sake. She's probably seen a few movies about aviation." Inside the cabin, Diana located the communication system and put on his headphones. Her voice echoed clearly and professionally over the control tower frequency. "Dallas Executive Tower, this is Golf Juliet 937 requesting clearance for takeoff. Destination Seattle, planned route via Victor 15, cruising altitude 35,000 feet." Tom turned pale. "Jonathan, she just requested a complete flight plan using standard civil aviation terminology. No cleaning lady knows that stuff." "Golf Juliet 937, clearance granted. Wind from the west at 12 knots, runway 28 left clear for takeoff," replied the tower. Diana's response was immediate and flawless. "Roger, tower. Golf Juliet 937, runway 28 left, wind from the west at 12 knots confirmed. Thank you." Richard Blackstone stopped laughing. "Jonathan, man, maybe we should reconsider this. If she really knows what she's doing." "She doesn't," Jonathan insisted, but there was a note of growing uncertainty in her voice. "It's just beginner's luck." At that moment, Diana initiated the engine start sequence. The deep, rising sound of the turboprops filled the hangar, a symphony of controlled power that made everyone present instinctively recoil. She hadn't just started the engines. She had executed a perfect takeoff, smooth as silk, without a single irregular noise or hesitation. "My God," Tom whispered, her voice almost inaudible over the roar of the engines. "Jonathan, you need to stop this now. Whoever she is, she's no ordinary cleaning lady." But Jonathan was trapped in his own arrogance, like a gambler who doubles down even when all the cards are against he. "I'm not going to give in to an employee. If she wants to play pilot, let her play." Outside the hangar, other employees began to gather, drawn by the noise of the engines and the unprecedented sight of Diana in the cockpit of the company's most expensive jet. Among them was Lisa Chun, a young aerospace engineer who had recently graduated and worked in the maintenance department. She knew Diana from coffee breaks and had always admired the older woman's calmness and intelligence. "Does Diana know how to fly?" Lisa asked Tom. "She doesn't just know how," Tom replied, his eyes fixed on the cockpit where Diana was checking the instruments with precise, confident movements. "She flies like someone who has been doing it for years. Like someone who trusts her own abilities so much that she doesn't even have to think about what she's doing." Inside the cockpit, Diana closed her eyes for a moment and allowed the memories to come back. She remembered the first time she had flown in combat, at only 22 years old, transporting medical supplies to an outpost under enemy fire. She remembered the adrenaline, the controlled fear, the absolute responsibility for human lives that depended on her competence. She also remembered why he had stopped. The last mission. The accident that wasn't his fault, but that made him question whether he could continue putting others at risk, even if he did everything right. The decision to leave his military career to raise Lilo in safety, far from the world of violence and danger he had known. But now, sitting in that cockpit, with the controls responding to her touch like an extension of his own body, Diana realized something she hadn't expected. She hadn't lost anything. Every skill, every instinct, every fragment of technical knowledge was there, intact, waiting to be used again. "Diana," Tom's voice reached her through the communication system. "You don't have to prove anything to those idiots. If you want to stop now, I support you." She smiled, an expression that combined gratitude and iron determination. "Thanks, Tom. But they gave me an opportunity to remember who I really am. And you know what? They have no idea they've just awakened exactly the wrong person." Jonathan knocked on the cabin window, gesturing for her to come out. "Enough of this. Turn it off now." Diana looked directly at him through the glass, and for a moment, Jonathan saw something in his eyes that made him take a step back. It wasn't defiance or anger, it was the absolute confidence of someone who was about to rewrite all the rules of the game. She picked up the microphone and her voice echoed through the hangar via the external speakers. "Gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts. You're about to find out what happens when you underestimate the wrong person." Meanwhile, at the back of the hangar, Lisa Chun was discreetly sending a text message to a number she had found in the human resources files, Diana's emergency contact. The reply came within seconds. "My mother was Captain Diana Santos, decorated by the Air Force. If anyone is doubting her, he'd better prepare for a lesson he'll never forget." The roar of the engines intensified as Diana advanced down the taxiway with a precision that made even the most experienced mechanics in the hangar stop what they were doing to watch. Every movement was calculated, smooth, professional. There was nothing amateurish about that execution. "My God," whispered Richard Blackstone, arrogance finally giving way to real concern. "Jonathan, she really knows what she's doing." "Impossible," insisted Jonathan, but his voice had lost all her previous confidence. He held his cell phone tightly, still recording, but now for completely different reasons. "It's just luck. Anyone can taxi a plane in a straight line." Diana's response came over the control tower loudspeaker, her voice echoing throughout the hangar. "Dallas Executive Tower, Golf Juliet 937 ready for takeoff. Requesting clearance for immediate departure with standard tactical flight profile." Tom Rodriguez choked. "Tactical flight profile? Jonathan, that's exclusive military terminology. Civilians don't know those protocols." "Golf Juliet 937. Clearance granted for tactical profile." "Have a safe flight, Captain," replied the tower controller. The silence that followed was deafening. Jonathan dropped his cell phone, which hit the concrete floor with a dull thud. What did he just call her?" "Captain," Tom repeated, her voice laden with astonishment and growing respect. The tower controller called her Captain. At that very moment, Lisa Chun rushed into the hangar, clutching his own cell phone as if it were a treasure. "Jonathan. I just spoke to his daughter. Diana Santos isn't just a cleaning lady, she's Captain Diana Santos, decorated by the United States Air Force. 12 years of active duty, including 3 combat tours in Afghanistan." The blood drained completely from Jonathan's face. He looked at the jet now positioned at the head of the runway, her mind finally processing the magnitude of the mistake she had made. "She flew F-16 on combat missions," Lisa continued, reading the information on her cell phone. "Transport C-130 in war zones. She was decorated twice for bravery under enemy fire. She saved dozens of lives during rescue operations in hostile territory. The takeoff that followed was a work of art. Diana didn't just make the jet climb. She executed a sequence of maneuvers that turned the departure into a display of absolute technical prowess. The plane climbed at a perfect curve, gained altitude with ballet-like elegance, and then, to the utter shock of everyone present, performed a series of acrobatic maneuvers that made the air vibrate with controlled power. "Jesus Christ," Richard muttered, his neck craned to follow the jet cutting through the sky. Her stunts with an executive jet like it's a military fighter. Jonathan was paralyzed, watching her $20 million aircraft dance in the air under the command of a woman he had called poor thing just minutes before. Every loop, every perfect turn, every impossible maneuver was a slap in the face to his arrogance. "Everyone," Diana's voice echoed over the radio, calm and professional, "this is Captain Santos performing the requested flight test. All systems operational. Returning to base in 17 minutes for scheduled landing." Tom picked up the microphone in the tower. "Captain Santos, this is Tom Rodriguez, former Navy. It's an absolute honor to have him at the controls." "The pleasure is his, Tom. Thank you for recognizing a fellow veteran." Tears began to stream down Lisa Chen's face. "You don't understand," said her voice breaking with emotion. Left her military career to raise her daughter alone after her wife died in combat. She could have been commanding any airline in the world, but she chose to push a mop to pay the child's medical bills. Jonathan finally found his voice, but it came out as a strangled whisper. I proposed to a decorated military officer. I mocked a war hero." "No," Tom corrected, her voice hard as iron. "You humiliated a working mother who was doing her best to support her family. The fact that she was also an extraordinary pilot only makes your cruelty even more repugnant." At that moment, Jonathan's cell phone began to explode with notifications. His funny video of the cleaning lady had already been shared hundreds of times on social media, but the comments were not what he expected. "This guy mocking a veteran is disgusting. Imagine being so arrogant that you offer marriage as a joke to a military hero. Does anyone know the name of this company? I will never do business with people like that again." Plot twist: the cleaning lady probably has more flight hours than this rich playboy will ever have. Jonathan tried to delete the video, but it was too late. It had been downloaded and reposted dozens of times, each share accompanied by increasingly indignant comments about his arrogance and prejudice. 17 minutes later, just as promised, Diana executed a landing that made everyone present hold their breath. There was not a single jolt, not the slightest sign of hesitation. The jet touched the runway like a feather landing on water. When she stepped off the aircraft, there was nothing left of the submissive cleaning lady in her posture. Diana Santos walked like the decorated military officer she had always been, with straight shoulders, firm steps, and a dignity that emanated from every pore. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, stopping directly in front of Jonathan, who seemed to have shrunk several inches since that morning. "The flight test was completed successfully. All systems operated within normal parameters. Any comments on my performance?" Jonathan opened and closed his mouth several times, but no sound came out. Around her, employees and mechanics began to gather, some filming with their cell phones, others just watching in respectful silence as her who had just rewritten all the rules of the game. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, Jonathan's video had already caught the attention of veterans and military organizations, turning what he thought was a joke into a public nightmare that would destroy not only her reputation, but the entire power structure he considered unshakable. What happened in the next 24 hours was an avalanche of justice that even the most creative Hollywood screenwriter could not have imagined. Jonathan's video mocking Diana had gone viral not only among ordinary people, but had reached the channels of military veterans, civil rights organizations, and influencers fighting against prejudice in the workplace. "Guys, check this out," said a famous military YouTuber with 2 million followers. This millionaire playboy offered marriage as a joke to a decorated Air Force captain who saved lives in combat. While he was inheriting his dad's companies, she was flying in war zones protecting his freedom to be a privileged jerk. The first calls started coming into Jonathan's office before sunrise. They were from customers canceling contracts, business partners breaking agreements, and journalists wanting statements about the prejudiced CEO who humiliated a military heroine. "Jonathan, we need to talk urgently," said Patricia Webb, chair of the board of directors at Mitchell Aviation, her voice cutting through the air like a cold blade. The board is calling an emergency meeting for 10 o'clock this morning. Meanwhile, Diana arrived at the hangar that morning and found something completely unexpected. Dozens of veterans, commercial pilots, aviation mechanics, and company employees were gathered in the courtyard, all applauding when they saw her. "Captain Santos," said Tom Rodriguez, approaching her with tears in his eyes, "on behalf of all the veterans who work here, we want you to know that we always knew there was something special about you. We failed to recognize it publicly, and we're sorry." A man older, wearing a Vietnam veteran's cap, approached. "Captain, I'm retired Colonel James Mitchell." "Yes, Jonathan's uncle. I served 30 years in the Air Force, and I want you to know that I am ashamed of my nephew's behavior. He does not represent the values our military family has always stood for." Diana nodded with dignity. "Colonel Mitchell, one person's prejudice does not define an entire family." I appreciate her words. At the emergency meeting, Jonathan faced the full wrath of the board. Patricia Webb wasted no time with niceties. "Jonathan, in less than 24 hours, you've managed to destroy the reputation we've spent 40 years building. 3 of our biggest clients have already canceled contracts totaling $15 million. The National Veterans Association is organizing a nationwide boycott of our services." "This will blow over," Jonathan insisted, but his voice was visibly shaken. "It's just a storm on the internet. Next week, no one will remember. No one will forget." Patricia replied, turning her laptop so he could see. "The video has 3 million views. It's been reposted by 400 influencers. It's being shown on the national news. The hashtag Justice for Captain Santos is among the global trending topics." The final blow came when it was her who showed him the real financial consequences. "Our company has lost 20% of his market value since yesterday. Investors are fleeing like rats from a sinking ship. And there's more. Captain Santos has received 17 job offers since yesterday, including one to head the Special Operations Division of the country's largest airline." At that very moment, Diana was in a completely different meeting. Robert Chun, CEO of Apex Aviation, Mitchell Aviation's biggest competitor, was sitting across from her in a fancy restaurant downtown. "Captain Santos, I'll be blunt. We want you to head our new training and special operations division. The starting salary is $300,000 a year, plus performance bonuses, premium health insurance for her and her daughter, and an educational fund that will ensure Lila can study at any university in the world." Diana remained calm, but inside she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. "Mr. Chun, I have to ask, does this offer have anything to do with recent events?" "Yes, it does," Robert admitted with an honest smile. "When we saw his video, his human resources team researched his military background. We discovered that you are exactly the type of leader we have been looking for months. Her technical competence is indisputable, but more importantly, she has exactly the type of character we want representing our company." 3 weeks later, the transformation was complete. Diana Santos became the first black woman to hold an executive position at Apex Aviation. Her first press conference was broadcast live to millions of people. "For 2 years, I pushed a mop to support my daughter after leaving a 12-year military career," she said, her voice clear and confident. "I'm not ashamed of that. Honest work is never a source of shame. What makes me proud is that I proved that competence and character have no color, gender, or social class." A reporter asked about Jonathan Mitchell. Diana responded with a class that impressed everyone. "Mr. Mitchell gave me an opportunity to remember who I really was. So, in a way, I'm grateful to him. He intended to humiliate me, but he ended up liberating me." Jonathan, meanwhile, faced a brutal reality. Removed from the presidency of the family business, he was forced to sell his shares to cover the losses caused by contract cancellations. Mitchell Aviation, a company that had been in existence for 4 decades, was sold for a fraction of his previous value. "Ironic," Tom Rodriguez commented to Lisa Chun as they watched the news. "He jokingly offered marriage to an extraordinary woman. Now he's alone, broke, and she's on top of the world." In an interview for a podcast 6 months later, Diana reflected on the whole experience. "I learned that the best revenge isn't to destroy those who hurt you, it's to build something bigger than they could ever imagine." Jonathan tried to diminish him, but he ended up elevating her. Her daughter Lila, now with premium health insurance and a guaranteed educational future, became a minor celebrity at her school. My mom always said we should judge people by their character, not their profession, she said in a school presentation that also went viral. She taught me that dignity doesn't come from what you do, but how you do it. A year after the incident, Apex Aviation had become the most respected executive aviation company in the country, led by values of equality and meritocracy that Diana had implemented. Her division trained hundreds of new pilots, many of them veterans and minorities who previously had no opportunities in the industry. Jonathan Mitchell, reduced to working as an independent consultant in a rented room, occasionally saw news about Diana's growing success. In moments of rare honesty with himself, he recognized that he had underestimated not only her abilities but her exceptional character. Diana's story became a case study in business schools on leadership, unconscious bias, and the power of resilience. But for her, the greatest victory was not the awards, the salary, or the public recognition. It was being able to look at Lila every night, knowing that her daughter would grow up in a world where she had proven that competence, dignity, and honest work always triumph over undeserved privilege and arrogant prejudice. When someone tries to diminish you, Diana used to say in her inspirational lectures, remember, he is revealing his own limitations, not hers. Use that as fuel to fly higher than they ever imagined possible. The lesson that remained was simple but powerful: never underestimate the person who cleans the floor his feet walk on. She may be exactly who he needs to learn about true greatness, humility, and what it means to win in life with class and dignity. If this story of overcoming adversity and justice touched his heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that true victory comes from those who turn adversity into opportunity, prejudice into motivation, and humiliation into fuel to reach heights that his detractors never dreamed of achieving.